You're listening to the Farm Report Podcast with Jake and Corey, brought to you by Indians Baseball Insider and broadcast on the Smoke Signals Podcast Network. We're talking Tribe.
Listen, let's play ball. Shoot it around. Let's play ball, baby. Bang down the stones. Play ball.
Well, good day, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever and whenever you happen to be tuning in, we are glad to have you aboard. I am Jake Dungan, minor league content coordinator for Indians Baseball Insider, and this is the Farm Report Podcast. Joined as always by Mahoney Valley Scarpers beat writer Corey Christen. Corey, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, especially with the MLB Draft we're wrapping up. Mahoney Valley, they start off in about a week from now. We're recording on the Friday, and they have their opening day a week from today. So I'm excited as ever, and we are joined today by a very special guest. Of course, talking MLB Draft. We're going to do that for this episode, Jake. I'm excited. You're excited, I'm sure. It's a great time to be a Tribe fan.
Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our special guest. He is the IBI MLB Draft expert, also works for Scout Media as a draft analyst. I'm talking, of course, about Jeff Ellis. Jeff, glad you could join us today. I know you've been busy the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's I went to bed around 7 in the morning, or 6 in the morning, woke up for a 7:30 interview, went back to bed, and then woke up around 11 to get started for today. So it's lots of energy drinks, lots of caffeine so far.
Well, this is your calling card, your busy time of year. So yeah, I can certainly understand. It getting to be a grind for a couple of days. So the Indians have gone through. Well, the entire MLB draft has gone through 10 rounds. Indians have made their selections. So let's dive right in and talk first about their first round pick, 14 overall this season. Outfielder Will Benson. He's listed as an outfielder, also the first baseman at Westminster Schools in Atlanta. Now, Jeff, I was reading your draft profile on him, and you are of the opinion that he was drafted too high and that he may have some flaws on his swing that are really going to need some attention as his development gets going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not alone in that. There was not a single national service that had him in the top 30 players. Great kid, some interesting athletic tools, but that swing basically needs to be taken apart and put back together. You see people who have seen him often. He'll swing at anything. So, I mean, there's big plus right-handed power potential there. He is not Jason Hayward. That is the worst, laziest comp, and I've been fighting that comp since February. It's just because they're both 6'6" from Georgia and African American does not mean they're identical. He is nothing like them. He's closer to Bobby Bradley than he is to Jason Hayward. I mean, there's a chance he's not going to stick in the outfield. I would put him maybe closer to, if you want a real comp, would be maybe at peak he could be someone like Cespedes, where instead of right-handed power, it's left-handed power, low on-base percentage, has to play in the corner, has the athleticism for center, but is kind of an average corner defender, and brings some speed, but is not a big on-base guy. So I think that would be a better comp in my opinion. The Hayward one drove me nuts and was completely off. It was almost as good as Harold Reynolds and Miguel Cabrera comp. He's a great kid. I just want to get that out of the way. If there's a kid who's going to overcome and be willing to work, it's this kid. He is a plus character kid. He's 17, which the Indians hit heavy. They've drafted a lot of young guys. There's only one person who was kind of older for the draft class in here. But, plus, I think when I did final grades, I thought like a 35 hit tool, 65 power, 60 speed current, and then 50 in the field and 60 with his arm.
Now, the comparison I saw you mention on Twitter, you brought up Cespedes. One that I saw you mention with in a conversation with somebody else, you said you brought up Chris Carter. Is that, you said Cespedes would be his ceiling? Is Chris Carter more of a kind of a middle ground expectation as far as his projection goes?
It is. I mean, I went and I tried to find, basically I went into baseball reference for the last 15 years, and I looked for a guy who was 6'4" or bigger, who played outfield, corner outfield or first base, who produced 20 or more home runs, struck out over 150 times in a season, and had an on-base percentage of 330 or less, which is kind of where I project him. And Chris Carter was the most common return. So, he's a 6'4", 245 guy, especially if Benson ends up having to move to first base. That's, I think that's where he profiles. I mean, he's a significant risk. I mean, if everything hits right, there's an outside chance to get Matt down. But that's everything hitting correctly.
So let's talk about large frame athleticism and power potential. That's something that everybody loves about him. And I've read his post-draft interview, and it wasn't all the same cliches like everybody says. I mean, he was saying basically the same thing, but he was saying it pretty much in his own words, which is what struck me. So, yeah, like you said, Jeff, he's obviously got the character. He's a great guy, but if he has the flaws in his swing to the point where he might be a guy who, like a Chris Carter type, who can hit for power when he makes contact, but times when he makes contact are going to be few and far between. That's something to keep an eye on, certainly, as the season goes on. Where do you see him starting the year for his professional career?
I think he spends the whole year in Mahoning Valley. He's not turning 18 until the end of the year, and like I said, that's his whole approach has to be to it. This isn't a simple pick this part, pick that part, and he swung at everything. And you look at the guys from PG Crosschecker who see him at events, and I mean, it was very overall negative from those people. There's a lot of potential, and this kid is the exact kid who, if you need a kid to work, you want. But he's got to go to Mahoning Valley. He needs heavy coaching. It's got to be a whole new approach. And his swing got really ugly and hitchy this year, so you got to go through the mechanics on the swing and his approach. So I don't think he ends up in Mahoning Valley. I think he's Arizona all year.
Okay, so let's go ahead and bring in Corey to this discussion. So if he ends up in Arizona, or if does see Mahoning Valley this year, Corey, you did a little reading up on him before the show. What were your first impressions of Mr. Benson when he was drafted?
Well, I mean, the film that I've been watching on him and everything I've read on him, including what Jeff has written and what our EIC, Tony Lastoria, has written on him, it seems like it is a risky pick, but it's a case of, what if it does work? Then it's a great pick. But if it doesn't work, then it's a bad pick. So, I mean, I think he has the potential. You got to take the time. I'm on the same boat with Jeff. I'll be lucky to see him in Mahoning Valley this year. But, he's very raw. And that's the thing Tribe fans have to realize about this kid. Yes, he's got the height. Yes, he's got the build for a power bat. But he's very raw with his swing. And there's just certain things that I watch in his film that he's a boom guy when he hits it, and he's a bust guy when he misses. So that's going to take time. I don't know about the concept of playing out in the outfield long term. I think he fits more as a first baseman, and that's basically what he's been listed as. He's got the build, he's got the frame. It's just a matter of, Jeff talks about it's a swing that needs to be picked apart, tinkered with, and put back together. But Jeff, I want to bounce this off for you. How do you think he can transform his swing into something that's more approachable at the plate and that he can put it on a consistent basis? What do you think he has to do?
Well, I mean, looking at it, it just seemed like the mechanics of it, it seemed like he was not, you want to have a guy, it's like a jump shot. The swing, it's the same thing with a pitcher. You want that consistent mechanical movement. And I felt like, I don't know how many videos you watch, but if you watch enough videos, you almost see his swing change, at bat to at bat. I think he needs a consistency, just to sit down, figure out what works best for him. And, this isn't a thing where we say they're completely screwed. It was not the guy I would have taken. but like I said, this is a great kid. I hope he succeeds, not just because he's on the Indians, because he's a great kid, A, and B, baseball needs more African American athletes, and maybe that's not what you're supposed to say, but we do need kids like this, and you want him to succeed for that reason as well. And they had to do a similar thing with Clint Frazier. I mean, he really kind of sputtered in low A for a bit, and they helped him get his mechanics in order, kind of get his swing in place. And we saw what happened from last year to this year. They took away the toe tap, they added the toe tap. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they sat down and kind of worked with it. They have had success with this. So it's getting a consistent mechanical approach and figuring out what works for him. I sometimes think with hitters like Benson, it's maybe about making it less cerebral, just making it all instinct.
Now, Jeff, the fact that he was drafted in the first round, even though he didn't garner any, we could say, top 30 projections from this class, does that increase his signability? Because we know he committed to Duke, and we know there were rumblings about him playing basketball, and we all know how great of a basketball program Duke has, but does that up his signability, the fact that the Indians, so to speak, reached for him in the first round? Or do you think all along he would choose the baseball route? Because, again, that sounds very enticing to go play over at Duke at the same time. And if he's drafted as high as he was without these top 30 projections, then, if I'm Will Benson, I have to think, well, this might be my best opportunity to sign.
I'm going to kind of tackle this in parts, because here's the thing. Will Benson was in New Jersey for the draft, which meant he pretty much had a promise. There's only 2 kids in Jersey. Jason Groom was supposed to be there, but when things went sideways, they canceled that. So they knew he was going to be drafted. Now, the hot rumor leading up to the draft was that he was going to go to San Diego in the 20s, and that his signing bonus demand was $4 million. So I don't know. Was that a lie? Was that, because these kids will float false demands to get to where they want to go. We see a lot of money manipulation, as it were. So is he just going to take slot? Slot for the Indians there is basically $3 million. It's a little less. I think he's going to take at least full slot at $3 million. Like I said, the rumor was, what he was telling people before the draft, I saw it in multiple places, was $4 million. We'll talk more about the draft today, but really, outside of their first 2 picks, and then Connor Capel in the 5th round, you could argue every single other pick they have taken is an underslot player. Maybe Canto was for slot, but every other guy. So it makes it seem like they were stocking away money to get these top 2 picks signed and then kind of sacrificing the rest of the draft.
So, Jeff, we look at the last year, 2015 draft for the Indians, and they arguably took a risk last year too, and picking up Brady Aiken. Do you think that this year is some kind of more risk-taking draft philosophy with Will Benson, and could it be that it works kind of negatively this time around?
Well, last year you could argue that their first 2 picks were both huge risks. Tristan McKenzie, you're taking a kid who's a rail, you're betting on adding probably 40 to 50 pounds and hoping that it doesn't affect velocity. Aiken, for the risk of the injury, it was the same doctor who did the Tommy John for Carlos Carrasco. It's a doctor they knew well, so they felt comfortable. So in some respects, I think, Benson's almost a bigger risk, because they went in and, Aiken had a lot of rumors, but they were able to see the medicals, they knew the doctor, and they felt 100% comfortable. With Benson, with Aiken, as long as he's healthy, that's a clean, easy approach. He'll be fine. With Benson, you're looking at taking a kid apart and putting him back together. So I think in some respects, it's almost a bigger risk. Because Aiken, it's not like you're just polishing him up. This is a kid who's going to require a lot of work.
All right, so let's move on to the Indians' 2nd round pick. And you were very high on this guy after he was drafted, and in a way that it kind of evens out the Benson pick, because, as you said, if the Indians' picks were reversed, if this guy was picked 1st round and Benson was picked 2nd round, we probably wouldn't blink an eye. But Nolan Jones, 3rd baseman out of Holy Ghost Prep in Pennsylvania. So, Jeff, you love this guy. Just tell us what you love about him.
Yeah, it's funny because I had him mocked to the Indians probably about 5 times before the draft. I just didn't expect it to be the 2nd round. Whereas Benson didn't make any top 30 lists, he was somewhere between 30 to 40 on every single list, mine included. Jones was in the 10 to 20 on every single list. And no one could figure out why he was sliding. It was one of the big moments of the draft, especially because we saw prep talent in general on day one go higher than expected. We saw those prep arms fly off. We saw like Paul Raggins, I think most people thought was going to be a second rounder, and he slipped into the first. But Jones was still there. Now, I don't know if he has a high bonus demand. I don't know if he floated a false bonus demand. The Indians are in a nice situation where they are, a team that is getting a lot of respect for their ability to develop. They've done such a nice job with it. The talk last year was that Brady Aiken basically told certain teams he would not sign if drafted, and positioned himself only to go to a select few of the Indians who are on that list. And they've starting to become very well known at this point for their ability to develop. And you wonder if someone like Jones, who is a little bit more raw, if he would prefer, to stay as a Midwest kid. What you love about him is he's young for the age. I believe he just turned 18 in either April or May. 6'4" kid, an athlete. He's a little awkward in spite of being a pretty good athlete out there, so he's not going to stick it short. He's probably going to move to third. I think he'll be fine there. Mature approach, very patient hitter, uses the entire field. At 6'4" with his bat speed, we're looking at, I think, at least a 55 hit, 55 power, possibly 60-60, so a plus in both. I think that is definitely potential with, average foot speed, because he is a good athlete. He's a guy right now who's probably more 55 speed. You expect that to go down as he gets older. I just thought we haven't had that kind of power option at third in a while, and I thought that could be him. Like I said, when you look at a left-handed hitter from cold weather state who's young, first draft class, 3 big boxes for the Indians.
That was going to be what I was going to talk about. Since he's a third baseman, the Indians, that's an definite area of weakness in the farm system. I mean, at the top of the farm system, you have Yandy Diaz and Giovanni Urshela, and then between that and arguably Jones, I mean, going from Double-A on down, there's not really a big-time third base prospect that the Indians have. So do you think Jones could be that guy who's going to be the next big thing at third base for them?
You know me, I still believe in Yandy. I still think that he could surprise if given him a chance. I had him as the 4th prospect in the system. But in terms of that guy, I mean, I think Yandy Diaz could be a good third baseman. In terms of a guy who has the potential to maybe be an all-star type third baseman, I think if everything goes right, Jones could be that. I mean, I hate putting a label or comp, but maybe a chance for a left-handed Todd Frazier type bat there if everything goes correctly.
Corey?
The thing that intrigues me about Jones is the fact that he's not only versatile in the field, but the fact that he's getting all this praise for his bat, and yet there's still room to grow. I mean, the approach at the plate is definitely there. But I think the power, he's still growing, he's only 18, I think the power could still come. And that's one thing that you could be excited about. And, Jeff, do you see him starting in Mahoning Valley, or do you see him starting in the Arizona League and then progressing up to Mahoning Valley in low A?
That's what I expect. I think he'll start in Arizona and then get come up towards the end in Mahoning Valley, kind of like they did with McKenzie last year. As long as he excels in Arizona, I think he gets the bump at the end.
Yeah, so what I see with Jones is if you call Benson a risk in the first, then you can call Jones a steal in the second. And, some of these other picks the Indians made may have been in sight of, okay, we got these 2 big prospects, and obviously if the Indians, go back to Benson real quick, if the Indians picked Benson as high as they did, even though he didn't get the high praise with rankings and all that, then they must have saw something in him. And then if they find the value in Jones in the second round, the signability of those two, if they go out and draft some underslot players like we might be talking about, then that would totally justify getting Benson and then Jones. I like the Jones pick a lot, but it only works out if they can get the money right, if they can get the contract right. And I don't know if he'll be a fast mover. I'm not exactly sure on that. I don't know exactly how they want to move him, but this is a good depth move, like you guys talked about. And there's a kid in Mahoning Valley. His name is Alexis Pantoja. He's a great fielder, but the bat's not quite there. And besides the Urshela's and the Yandy Diaz's, that's really it in the system for third base on a consistent basis. So if Jones can develop and he can grow like everyone thinks he can, then I don't see why he couldn't be the third baseman of the future for the Indians.
So, Jeff, these two guys could have some pretty hefty bonus demands. I don't think that is there any risk of the Indians not being able to sign one of them, or do you think that they'll be able to get both of them done, and how soon do you think it'll be able to get done?
I think the only player I have concerns about is Samad Taylor in the 10th round. Everyone else is done. They have everything set. Like I said, they went. They only took four guys you could argue were top 100 prospects. In the two we talked about, Logan Ice and Connor Capel. Everyone else is Jorge Cantu is close to, but not quite a top 100 guy. But everyone else was an underslot signs. They went into this knowing what they needed to do. They took some other players, and they're stocking that money away. I think they'll sign, and I don't think there'll be an issue. They knew exactly what they wanted. Like I said, that deal with Benson is already done. He's got to come take his physical. If I go through who they took in my head, I'm pretty sure everyone they've drafted is done with the postseason, so they don't even have to worry about that. This isn't going to be like when they took Mike Pappy and they couldn't sign him for 3 weeks. They can just start signing him right away. So I imagine next time they are home, so they can do the whole big thing with the kids, they'll start bringing them out and letting them sign and kind of have their day at the parks where they, give each kid kind of a day to be front and center.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the Indians' second round Comp B pick. Catcher Logan Ice. Besides having arguably the coolest name of all of the MLB Draft class this year, what is there to like about this guy? Because one, the Indians don't have a ton of great catching depth in the system, like third base. What does Ice bring to the table, and can he help bolster that depth?
He's one of those guys. I'll be honest. I wasn't following him at the start too much, but the nice thing about having that Scout National gig is you hear stuff from all over. And Oregon State itself has a really interesting lineup. Indians draft pick from last year, Nick Mandrigal, plays for them. Caden Grenier, who was another really high player amongst the high school crop, is there. KJ Harrison, who has the potential to be a top 15 pick next year, is there. And they also had a pitcher who, unfortunately, needed Tommy John surgery, a left-hander named Drew Rasmussen, who also would have been a probably top 20 pick next year. So you added those guys in. I'm already kind of checking Oregon, and a few of the fans are like, what do you think about Ice? And I did cool off. Oh, bad pun, unintentional. I'm sorry, guys. As the year went on, he started out really well. I'm not going to say on fire. But, he was out there and he was hitting, and this is a guy who was known, his reputation is defense first, anything else is bonus. So he's a switch hitter. And I'll be honest, I do my 3-round mock, and I nearly put him there to the Indians. And the reason I didn't put him there is because of my personal bias and how much I really believed in Sean Murphy. Even as I put Sean Murphy in my mock, I go, Logan Ice is a switch hitter. The Indians would prefer a switch hitter to a right-handed bat. I should put him there, and I didn't. I knew he fit the mold. But, yeah, he offensively started to emerge. And like I said, this is a very talented lineup. After about a month, he's the cleanup hitter. Really hard guy to strike out. I talked a lot about Matt Theisis this year. Had a 4% strikeout rate. I think at the end of the day, Ice's was somewhere around 7. He walks a little, not a ton. A little gap power. Just made nice contact, switch hitter. And you look at all that, it's there's a potential 50 grade bat, an average bat, maybe 40, 45 power. So even if it's a 40 power, so it's deviation below, and he doesn't run great, so that's a 40, but defensively he's 50, 50, 50. So you're looking at an average defensive catcher, maybe slightly above average arm, and an average bat, that's a starter down the road. I mean, if you go and look at how bad the catching position is, they got a kid who, Jan Gomes has had some struggles this year, and they do have Perez. And, Gomes, we got him. He was already he wasn't prospect age. So, this guy could conceivably be the catcher of the future if things don't work out with someone like Meach. Worst case, he's a great backup down the line, but you have to like what he presents.
So you looking at the what the Indians have in their farm system now as far as catching depth. You have in Akron, Eric Haas, Jeremy Lucas. Then in Lynchburg, you have Signor Loopstock and Daniel Salters. Then in Lake County, you have Francisco Mejia. How does Ice compare to these guys?
With what Mejia is doing right now, he's clearly number one. The only other name, I love what Lucas is doing, but he's always kind of been a hit-first catcher. Him and Haas have kind of fallen behind. And Salters, it's only his first year. He's doing well. It's his first full season. He did play last year. He was a draft pick last year. But he doesn't seem to be a priority guy. And I know when I talked to someone in the Indians, the talk was, well, we need to add catchers. And one could argue they might have added 3 of them. They just felt that this was an issue they needed to address. I think he's probably number 2. Don't forget about Simeon Lucas. I know I don't think he's left Arizona yet, but they gave him a nice bonus to be a 6th-round pick last year. So he's still out there kind of in the vapor as well. But I think, Ice is pretty fairly number 2, and he should start the year with Mahoning Valley.
Corey, what do you think of Mr. Ice?
I tell you what, guys, this is my favorite pick the Indians made, and for 2 reasons. Number 1, we talk about the depth, and you guys already hit the points on it. I love it for a depth move in the organization. Actually, let me make that 3 points. The second point is that I think he's a guy that I will see in Mahoning Valley this year, but I don't know if it'll be for too long. I think this is a guy that can progress pretty fluidly throughout the system. Now, maybe with Salters up in Lynchburg and Mejia in Lake County, we will see Ice in Mahoning Valley for most, if not the whole season, but this is a guy that I think could jump those guys, and not just on a quick scale, but I think as time progresses, he can only get better. I don't see really any there's flaws in everyone's game, but there's nothing that really pops my eyes and that kind of alerts me. He's a solid catcher who, the defense is there and the bat has to come along a bit. But as far as a depth move, I think it's great. I think the pick that they took him 72nd overall, and all the rankings had him sitting between 65 and about 110 or 120, so right in the middle there, or a little on the higher side. But for a depth move, I think it's great for purposes of he can progress in a fluid manner. I think it's great, and I think that it's safe. I think it's a very safe pick as far as catchers are concerned. And I know, Jeff, I know you were high on the kid from Wright State, but I really like this pick. It probably is my favorite in the draft, and it's just because I think he's solid, and I think that this is a guy that can progress fluidly.
I agree. It's a good pick, and I when you look at the entire draft, if we do talk about the other catcher they took, I think you're right. I think if they push Mejia up a level, he could go right into Lake County, just because they did draft 2 college catchers who they're going to want playing time for. Good call there, Corey.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the guys in Akron right now. Lucas and Haas each have their upside, but I don't know if it's major league starter type upside. Then I've also seen Mejia a little bit at Lake County, and there's obvious great talent there. Daniel Salters, I haven't been to Lynchburg to see him play. I will be heading down to Lynchburg next month if everything comes together. So hoping to see him play then. But I keep waiting for him to really kind of slow down and kind of have that slump. And he's not batting 340 or whatever he was anymore, but he's still having a very good rookie professional season. And maybe Ice slots in number 2 behind Mejia, but I don't know if I can put him ahead of Daniel Salters just yet, just because of what he's done and how he's been able to continue to play productive baseball, even at such a high level as Lynchburg out in his first season. So I would think that Ice maybe slots in number 2, like you said, Jeff, but I might be inclined to move him to number 3 just because of how Salters has played.
If I can speak and testify to Salters real quick, seeing him in Mahoning Valley last year, yes, he was drafted in the low teens. I think he was the 12th rounder maybe pick. he wasn't exactly, highly coveted coming out, and he put a chip on his shoulder. I remember talking to him last year at Mahoning Valley. He's a great kid. He's got a great head on his shoulders. He goes to work every day, and he puts his head down. And he really came along last year at Mahoning Valley. He took advantage of opportunity when Lee Jen-Chu went down with an injury that set him down for the rest of the season back, I think that was in late July he suffered that. But in any route, Salters really developed this reputation throughout the New York Penn League as this solid defensive catcher who was very persistent at the plate, and he developed that snap throw to first base that he's really taken, and the system is working for him because he's already progressed up to Lynchburg, and part of me has a feeling that he has the possibility to get bumped up to Akron this year, which is saying something with the way Jeremy Lucas has played. So I just think Salters has moved along nicely, and maybe Ice could be, right there with him or just behind him or just ahead of him. But, for a guy like Salters to be drafted in the 12th round with a year's progress, and then a guy like Ice to be drafted in the 2nd round and getting these comps, I think the Indians should feel good behind having Jan Gums and Roberto Perez, and then having guys like Salters and Ice back in the farm system.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the rest of the draft. Now, Jeff, we're 10 rounds in. We don't have to go through all of these guys, but just go ahead and give us your highlights of who you like out of the Indians' choices so far, 3rd round and beyond.
I'll just kind of, the 3 right-handed pitchers are all the same pitcher. I think it's Siviak. The first one at least has 1+ pitch in his cutter, but all 3 of them are undersized righties who throw high 80s to low 90s and have excellent control. So, they should move quickly. They're more than likely depth or quad A guys. They're all there to save money, so we can just kind of move through that. Jose Nelson is really interesting in terms of just his numbers. He put on an absolute show in the JUCO ranks. 20 home runs, I think 19 doubles, 9 triples. He batted over 500, and his OPS was over 1,000. So that's just a fun guy to look at. The final pick, Samad Taylor, I think maybe could be the first time they don't sign a top 10 pick since Ross Kivett. They took a chance, but he's a really twitchy up-the-middle player. Cantu is, he's kind of like the Joe Rizzo you might have heard about on TV in the 2nd round. Not as good as Rizzo. He's kind of that small, squat guy who doesn't have a lot of power, doesn't really have a position, just seems to always hit and have a good approach. So then that kind of, I think I've gone through everyone but the 2 big ones at this point. And to me, the 2 big ones are, I'll start with Connor Capel. I went to a Kent State game a few months ago when Kent State faced Ohio State. And, this is one of the players I was told to look out for. And he is a guy that Mike played in the majors for a while. The reports are it's either 60 or it's 70 grade speed. This kid worked. Tyler Naquin is kind of the comp for him. Better approach at the plate, though. And when you look at him, 70 grade speed, it's plus arm, it's plus defense. Son of a major leaguer, has kind of that mature advanced approach, was consensus top and under prospect. The big knock on him is, he's 19. He's all of 17 days younger than Blake Rutherford. And while I had Blake Rutherford as my number 1 player, he tumbled because he was 19. So Capel is in that, where he's also an older guy for the grade, and I think that hurt his value. And then the last guy, I think Michael Tinsley from Kansas is really interesting in the 7th round. The need for catchers was such that they took 2 kind of advanced college hitters. Tinsley hit 377 this year. He struck out even less than Ice. There's not much power there. He's a good athlete with a good approach. He's not as good of a defensive catcher as Ice. But, playing at Kansas, no one really goes and checks out Kansas for any sports outside of basketball. So he's kind of a forgotten man, but he produced really well down there, had a really easy stroke, and didn't strike out much. So that's why I think partially, they took these guys high. They're going to spend money on them, and they're going to want them both to get at bats. Tinsley needs more work, so he might start the year at Mahoning Valley, because you're not going to put a college kid in Arizona, and that's why Ice could get the push up. And for as much as I do like someone like Salters and all the work he's done, it's he still projects mostly as a backup because there's very little pop to his game. So he might get caught in that numbers game, or if he goes up to Akron, or if he's just splitting time with Meade at AA. Unfortunately, I don't think he's a priority prospect right now. So they really thought that they had to go heavy on catchers, and they took two guys early that they obviously like a lot. And there's a chance they could even turn Cantu into a catcher as well.
There you go, folks. I don't know how he keeps it all straight, but Jeff Ellis, he does great work for Indians on Scout and also Scout Media doing MLB Draft stuff. Before we go, Jeff, I did want to touch on, you mentioned Kent State, and I know you've done some scouting in the area. Let's talk about the San Diego Padres first round pick. Was Kent State starting pitcher Eric Lauer. Just tell me what you think of him and how excited you are to see a local product go in the first round.
Yeah, it was. I knew it was going to happen. He just really put himself on the map and pitched really well this year. Put up the lowest ERA by a starting pitcher in NCAA since 1979. Minor concerns at the one time he faced good talent, he struggled, but it's kind of alleviated by the fact that he was excellent out on the tape. I think he's more a mid-rotation lefty. 4 pitches. He was an all-state receiver, really athletic kid with decent delivery. It's kind of a safe pick. And don't forget that Kent State also had Andy Ravel, who was their Saturday starter, who was taken by the Blue Jays in the 7th round. So they got a few more kids who have a chance to go in rounds 11 through 40. Connor Simonetti, I think, had 17 home runs this year at first base, so he's kind of on the radar as well. But yeah, they're top. Lauer and Ravel came in together and were talked about very well together. They were kind of this big coup that they got both these kids in, and it's really unfortunate that Kent State didn't get an at-large bid into the NCAA tournament after losing to Western Michigan, who also had a left-hander who ended up going in the second round. But Lauer is a 4-pitch guy, mid-rotation. Ravel is more of a back-end pitchability righty, low 90s. But and Kent State's just a machine, and you could argue. I mean, Ohio State had a great year this year. You could argue most years Kent State might be the stronger program.
Yeah, well, we wish those kids all the best, and happy to see these local guys get their due on the national stage. So, yeah, look forward to seeing them develop. Last thing to wrap things up, Jeff. First of all, just what are we looking forward to in the last rounds of the MLB Draft for the Indians? And then, if you want to, give your grade for the Indians draft so far, because the last few years Indians drafting has really improved. Do you believe that this draft could still follow that trend?
I think. Well, I guess my problem with the Indians right now is I have no idea what Jones and Benson are going to cost. I don't think Capel will be super expensive because he is 19. I mean, his dad wasn't a big-time major leaguer. I'm sure he made good money, but he only played like 3-4 years. He's a Texas commit, and that Texas program is kind of a mess. They just the head coach there is like the all-time winningest coach in NCAA history, but they've been so bad the last 5 years they pretty much forced him into retirement. So there's a lot of reasons why Capel would not want to go to Texas. But if the other two, especially if that $4 million bonus was not true, and you can get Benson for the 2 or 2.5, all of a sudden they could be rolling into these rounds with extra money to spend. And there's still some interesting names out there that we had. You're going to be looking for depth guys. They got to fill out that Mahoning Valley roster. There's going to be probably 2 to 3 guys who are the sons of scouts or coaches or former Indians greats who they have no intention of signing. There's going to be 5 to 6 top prospects who they draft just so they can get a chance to sit and talk with them like they did last year with Chandler Day and Tristan English and big name players like that. And they'll, we'll probably add about another 10 to 15 players tomorrow, and then the other 20 to 30 I doubt get signed. But like I said, it's a good chance to kind of sit there, hear a few more names called. Maybe they can find someone. Like this is where they found Cody Allen a few years ago. If you go back, the greatest draft in Indians history was the 1987 draft, and they failed to sign their first rounder. They didn't have a second rounder because they decided to sign 36-year-old Jesse Orozco to a contract. And instead it was in rounds 11 through 50 where they found Brian Giles, Jim Thome, Curtis Lekancic, and a few other guys who lasted multiple years in the majors that are escaping my mind. So there's a lot to be done, and this is where you adjust your scouts. And tomorrow's a little more fun because it's just rapid fire.
There you go. That just goes to show you, the MLB draft, you never know where the next big star is going to come from, no matter how much hype they get in the first or second round. I mean, like you said, the guys like Brian Giles, Jim Thome, they come out of nowhere. So, Jeff Ellis, it's been great having you, and thanks for taking the time. I know this has been a hectic few days for you. Corey, do you have any final thoughts before we sign off here?
One more player I wanted to touch on real quick. If they can sign him, like Jeff talked about, Connor Capel, I think it's a great value pick in the 5th round if they can get him signed. He's a solid defender. He's a solid hitter. I really like that. But overall, the Indians made a couple risky picks, and they made some safe picks, and they made some value picks. So all in all, this is a draft, at least the first 10 rounds that we've saw as of this recording. I think Indians fans can be pretty pleased with what they saw. Jeff, again, thanks for your insight. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. It's always fun to talk draft, and I'll be going through withdrawal in about 2 weeks, and then I'll start put together my top sophomore juniors about 2 weeks after that, and I can't take it anymore.
Well, there you go. The man who never stops, Jeff Ellis. It's been great having you. Corey, always great talking to you, and we'll be back again. I know we've had some scheduling issues, so that's why we haven't been on the air in a little while, but we'll be back hopefully on a weekly basis from here on out. Got some live remotes coming up. We'll probably be doing something at Lake County, maybe Mahoning Valley too. Be sure to stay tuned for that. Follow us on Twitter. Corey's at CD Christen. I am Jake D Baseball. And then, of course, follow the great Jeff Ellis on Twitter, at Jeff MLB Draft, for all your draft questions, insight. He'll be happy to answer anything you throw at him. So it's been great talking to you guys today, and looking forward to watching these guys develop. Love draft time. Love seeing what the Indians go out and get, especially the last few years after seeing guys like Lindor and Clint Frazier and Bradley Zimmer, Tyler Naquin, all these guys. It's a lot of fun this time of year. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed the show today, and I hope you learned something. I think we all have learned something just talking to. I feel like I always learn something when I talk draft with them with Jeff Ellis. So it's been a lot of fun. So that's going to do it for us today. For Jeff Ellis and Corey Christen, this is the Farmer Report Podcast. I am Jake Dungan, and we say to you, have a good one.